It's exhausting, isn't it? The constant worry, the concern, where you can't focus. You go through the day, feel like you didn't really get anything done, and yet you still feel more tired. In some ways, it's more exhausting than the regular workdays were, than the daily grind, the getting up early, the commute in, the office hours, the commute home. And I think the most exhausting part of it might be the uncertainty, the not knowing what comes next, not knowing what the future holds. It drives us to that place of seeking protection and seeking safety, of isolation and self quarantine. I think that's where we are, and that's where we should be with what's going on. And that's also, I think, where so many of our significant Bible characters are. And that's what we're looking at in our single takes over the next few weeks. We paused that last Friday and took a deep dive into Psalms with Phil, but we picked that back up today with our first character. Most of us have heard of Elijah, the greatest Old Testament prophet. Most of us have not read 1 Kings, where we find the story of Elijah, the greatest Old Testament prophet. We're going to get into just a sliver of that today, and maybe, just maybe, we will find in the story of Elijah's isolation our own story, and we'll see what God does with that. So I'm reading from 1 Kings chapter 19, starting at verse 3. Here we go. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to a town, he left his servant there while he himself continued a day's journey into the desert. He came to a broom tree, sat underneath it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. And that has all of the elements in it. That initial fear that drives us to look for protection and safety in isolation. Then the anguish that comes with the worry and the concern. And finally, that exhaustion. After we say, I've had enough, I'm done with this, can this just be over? He falls asleep exhausted. Here's what God does. If you've been there, if you understand Elijah's situation, if that's maybe where you are today, here's what God does next. All at once, an angel of the Lord touched him and said, "Get up and eat." Elijah woke up, looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of fresh water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a while later and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." There are only two things that God wants Elijah to do here. Only two of them, and maybe they make sense for us. The first one is he wants him to rest. We move through life at a pace that really only allows us to go from one deadline to the next, one rehearsal to the next, one assignment to the next, one meeting to the next, always driving towards the achievement and the accomplishment and that productivity. And maybe, just maybe, in this period of collective isolation where we have to stop, God might be asking us to reassess and not find our value in our productivity, not find our value in the output. Maybe he's telling us, like he's telling Elijah, man, I just want you to rest. You are more than what you produce. And there's a second thing. He wants him to eat. He wakes him up, and where there was sand and rocks before, now there is bread, still warm, by the way, and fresh water. And God simply says, look around you. Everything you need, I've already provided for you. You just need to partake of it. Feed your body, feed your mind, feed your soul. And I wonder how many mornings we wake up these days and the concerns and the worries are already spinning, already rattling, and we don't take the time to really observe what God has put around us and nourish ourselves with it. maybe these days that we're going through are a time for each of us individually and for us as a church collectively, for the UCC Medfield family, to find our value in our connection with God. He's not seeking productivity. He says rest. And to recognize that everything we need, yeah, He's already put it around us. Every day you wake up, it's already there. And He just wants you to eat. Maybe we find our story in Elijah's. We'll see you on Friday for character number 2. UCC family, take care.